Hello guys, today we're in the shop and we have a project. I'm going to show you how to repair a broken fishing pole. This is one of my favorite fishing poles. We have it's a micro graphite. It's a micro graphite ultralight Shakespeare rod, and I've got a little ultralight reel on it that we use. We use this for sand bass and for crappie. It's a 5-footer, but it got slammed in the door the other day, so I'm going to show you in this video how we are going to repair this rod and make it to where it works just fine. And do not throw away these rods. They're easy to repair. Let me show you how you do it. We're going to need some items to repair this rod. We're going to need some super glue, some heat shrink, some marine grade heat shrink. We're going to need drill bits, and preferably you're going to need some kind of a rotary tool so that you can cut your graphite rods off. And you may or may not need a drill. We're going to see. It may work out to where we don't. You're going to need a lighter, and that's pretty much all you're going to need for this project. We're going to repair this broken rod tip that got shut in the door, and part of it's actually missing, but we're going to repair it and make one that's still viable for us while we go fishing. Alright, we're going to take out our little rotary toolkit. Guys, if you haven't bought one of these, I bought this for $9 or $10 at Harbor Freight. It's been a few years ago, so they may actually be a little bit more expensive now. But this little rotary toolkit is really handy for cutting off and nipping off graphite. If I can find the right kit. So the first thing you're going to find is you're going to find your little chuck, and it's got a screw in the end of it. Okay? What we want to do is we want to place that chuck, open our kit, open that. Let's place our chuck, if I can get it down in there. We'll replace this chuck, this small one, with this larger one. Slide it down in here like this. We're going to slide this through here. Stick this on here. Now all that's going to do is hold our chuck in. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this little screw out. I would have to drop everything. What we're going to do is we're going to take this little end screw out of our chuck, and we're going to place it in our cutoff wheel, like so. Put it back in our chuck, and just tighten it down. You want this snug to where it'll hold that little cutoff wheel. Now you can, it's a screw, so you can actually tighten it up, but you don't really need to. If you can just hand tighten it, and because it's not gonna, it doesn't take a lot to do what we're about to use this for. Set this aside. I'm gonna plug this in. Plug that in. One of these plugs will be tight. Plug that in. Now, I'm going to take my rod, and use safety glasses for this. I'm going to take my rod, and this, where it's broke right here is frayed. I'm just going to cut that off and make a smooth cut, as close to the end as possible. That quick. So now I've got my smooth end. I've got all the fray off of there, okay? Now, that's the first step. Now I've got to clean up the other end. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my rod tip down, and I'm going to say, okay, how far away do I want my eye? This eye I'm going to have to lose. I'm going to have to lose this eye because it's so close to the end where it was broke. So I'm going to cut part of this off. And what I like to do is I like to line up my previous eye. And I want to take this, and I'm going to basically make a two-piece rod out of this. And so I'm going to line up this eye with that one. And I'm going to take and I'm going to cut off that much, because it's going to go down in this other tube. So get you a good smooth cut. And that's all you're going to need to do with your little end grinder. Now you can crunch that off, but you're going to break your fibers. So it's better to, now that eye is set aside, you won't need it. And we're going to see if this will fit down in here. And as luck would have it, it will not fit down in here, all right? So what we've got to do is we've got to take some, this is 220 grit sandpaper, and just start working it. And you want to take off just enough to get it down in the other part of the rod. You're making a two pieces, all you're doing. Take a little bit off, it's graphite. See if it'll slide down in there. If it won't, it's close. Take your sandpaper. Do it again. You're going to do this until it fits. All right. And now we know it's going to fit, okay? Now we don't want it so loose. We don't want it super loose, but we don't want it super tight. We want it to be able to slide down in there, because that's going to be our strength on our joint. Now, we're going to mark it about exactly where we want this eye to this eye. We want to mark that with a pencil, because we know once we put it in there, we want it down in there a certain distance. So we're going to mark it right here on our, so it's going to be down in there that far. Now you see how far it'll be down in there. Now what we've got to do is we're going to take a little alcohol and we're going to clean the graphite dust. So you can see it on my finger. We're going to clean the graphite dust off of this shaft. Let me go get some alcohol. Okay, I didn't get any alcohol, but if you have some lying around, fingernail polish remover or just some acetone will work. Alcohol, denatured alcohol, fingernail polish remover, whatever you have, just to clean your graphite shaft. That's all you're doing, cleaning your graphite shaft so that you get all that, you can see, get all that graphite dust off of this. Now you want to let this dry real good after you do it. We're done with the acetone. Put that down here in the floor. We want to lay this to where it'll dry. Okay. Lay that up there to where it'll dry. Then we want to put up our little rotary tool. We're done with it. Make sure these little blades are really fragile. Make sure that you take them back off and store them. Take those back off and store them so they won't break. Your kit will usually come with 2 or 3 in it, and so they're real thin little. They're like a little grinding disc. It's got a couple of them in here. Lay them back in here. Bash your button, which holds your chuck. Take this off. Take that back off. When you do that, you're going to want to put your screw back in. Put your screw, so you don't lose it, back in the end of your chuck. See how the acetone turned my finger white? Alright, put that in there. We're going to set this aside and we'll put it up a little later. Now in some cases when you do this, you may have to, if you don't want to really whittle this down with your sandpaper, you may have to take a drill bit that'll barely fit in here and clean that out. But in this case, it broke pretty clean. What we're going to do now is I've got my mark right here. I'm going to remake my mark so I can know exactly where I want, how far I want to place it in there. There's my mark. Okay. I'm going to measure it again. Make sure. It's going to go up to my mark right there. And that's where I'm going to super glue this in. But before I do, I'm going to take a piece of heat shrink. This is marine grade heat shrink, and you can buy a sorted set of this at Harbor Freight. What it's going to do is it's going to go on here, but you don't need but about half of one of these sticks. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to cut it in half. There you go. Put that one back for the next one. I've done this several times on different fishing rods. And what you're going to do, take this apart, slide that heat shrink up on here, get it out of the way, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to get this ready to sit back in there. All right? And I see my mark on my tip. Now when you do this, you got one shot at it, so you got to make sure your eyes are lined up. Make sure my glue is good. I'm gonna put a little drop over here. Yep. Now this is not gel super glue, it's just regular super glue. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some below my mark on my rod shaft, and I'm gonna tilt it up, and I'm going to get it on my mark. At the same time, I'm going to lower my heat shrink. Make sure it all lines up, and that will stick really quickly. Now I've got my end of my rod, my eyes are lined up, and I'm going to heat my heat shrink. Okay, all I'm going to do now is let that heat shrink cool. That rod tip will be there permanently, okay, until you slam it in the next car door. But now I've brought my tape over. This was a 5-foot rod. Because of the amount of pole that we lost, this is now a 4-foot 3-inch rod, and it's an ultralight, and it'll do everything that 5-foot will do, and maybe even more, because now you won't have to worry about it. You won't have to worry about it in the small place. In small place, that rod tip won't come out. What we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to restring it. I'm going to restring my. Now I'm going to take and restring my reel, if I can get this here. It's a spin cast, so I'm going to open my bail. I think this is 6-pound test on here, maybe 8. Take it through my eyes, and now I have a rod, an ultralight rod, ready to go for the next thing. I'm going to tie a lure on here, and we're going to make a few casts with it and see how it performs. So I'm just going to tie on, I've got a couple of little nuts, little quarter 1/4" nuts. I'm just going to tie these on. Tie these little dudes on and make a few casts. You can use a weight or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to use these because they're handy. Take it outside and see how it casts. I'll show you. See how flexible that tip is? It's still flexible because it's just like it's acting like a two-piece rod. It's got the glue in there, it's got the heat shrink, and now it's a two-piece rod, and you still got a good little ultralight that you can use and take with you in your car. Okay guys, so I just fixed my little ultralight, and so now I'm going to make a few casts with it. I got a couple of nuts that I've tied on. Let's see what we can do with this little thing. See how it does. Oh yeah, still casts and retrieves and does everything you would want it to do, and it's ready to go on the next fishing trip. Hate that it got broke, but don't throw these things away. You can always fix them. All right guys, get out there, get doing USA.